At the beginning, a school building was shown while Ikuto was thinking about a world of reverse chastity, a world where women possess the stronger libido. Because of this, women had become the carnivorous types who actively sought out men. Nearby, some girls were calling out to Tanaka-kun and Takahashi-kun, asking whether they had time after school. Ikuto was shown sitting at his desk, thinking that he, Ichise Ikuto, had spent 15 years in this world. He reflected that the gender ratio in the world he had reincarnated into was 1:20. Skewed gender ratios were a standard trope in light novels and manga, but when the scarcity of men became reality, one had to remain on high alert. Ikuto recalled that after growing up healthy and strong, he had made his debut outing with his mother before starting elementary school. While his mother was focused on shopping, Ikuto, driven by curiosity, had slipped away to explore on his own. As a child, Ikuto had been walking alone when a woman noticed him and approached, commenting that it was dangerous for a little boy to be by himself and suggesting that he come to her house. Ikuto remembered sensing danger when the woman realized that he was a male child, a shota at that. Ikuto managed to escape somehow, but his mother found out that he had sneaked away and scolded him severely. Because of that incident and his general behavior, Ikuto believed he had probably been judged as a reckless child. He had been allowed to attend elementary school, but middle school had been done through correspondence education at home. That, however, was all in the past. Now in high school, Ikuto found himself surrounded by cute girls. He believed that a pampered harem life should be waiting for him and thought he needed to prepare for the greatest peak of his popularity, or so he had believed. Instead, Ikuto noticed boys around him expressing fear, saying they just wanted to go home early and that walking home with girls was scary because they did not know what might happen. Ikuto observed girls surrounding those boys and thought that since women were carnivorous, men had ended up becoming frightened herbivores. By the standards of Ikuto's old world, there should have been no reason to turn down a girl's invitation. Suddenly, time was called, and two boys intervened, asking everyone to step back and warning that the male guardians would not show mercy if anyone tried to get closer. Ikuto thought about the male guardians, bodyguard-like existences meant to ensure that boys could live their high school lives in peace. They were students of the same age who had been chosen through a selection process separate from general admissions and often acted as intermediaries between timid men and aggressive women. The frightened boys ran away, repeatedly saying that women were scary, while the male guardians dismissed the crowd. The girls watching commented casually as the boys left. Ikuto reflected that the male guardian title likely carried a double meaning, a guardian who was male by gender and someone who guarded males. Even so, Ikuto wondered why girls hit on generic boys like Takahashi and Tanaka when the male guardians were far more handsome. Ikuto heard a girl say that she simply wanted to get close to someone, even if just a little, and Ikuto admitted to himself that he also wanted to get close to girls. Taking initiative, Ikuto called out, offering that he was free after school. He immediately realized that his voice had cracked from nervousness. The girls reacted by pointing out that Ikuto already had Toosaka-kun and said they could not get close because Toosaka-kun was there. Ikuto replied that if they meant Rui, Toosaka Rui was currently in the faculty room. The girls clarified that they were referring to the Ichise Ikudo and Toosaka Rui pairing and said that even they needed courage to interfere with the atmosphere between the two. They urged them to start dating already. Ikuto denied it, thinking about how Toosaka Rui was a male guardian and also a man, just like himself. Same-gender romance was understood and accepted in this world, but Ikuto desperately wanted to date a beautiful girl. After the girls walked away, Ikuto sat at his desk, reflecting on his appearance, his carefully styled black hair, his muscular build with faintly visible abs, his average academics, and his decently good athletic ability. When he had first enrolled, he had felt the gazes of interest from the girls, but now there was no one left. Ikuto sighed, thinking that a pampered harem was nothing but a pipe dream. Then he noticed that Rui was taking a long time and remembered that it was prohibited for male students to go home alone. He decided to go pick Rui up. In the hallway, Rui was surrounded by girls. Ikuto called out to him, and Rui reacted in surprise, asking whether Ikuto had been waiting in the classroom. Ikuto explained that Rui had not come back at all, so he had come to call him. Then Rui apologized to Ikuto. Ikuto then thought about Toosaka Rui. Toosaka Rui had beautiful silver hair, long eyelashes, and large eyes. Toosaka Rui had slender limbs and was 174 centimeters tall, slightly taller than Ichise Ikuto. 1 month into school, there was not a single person who did not know Toosaka Rui. Toosaka Rui was overwhelmingly cool, a prince-like existence. This high-spec handsome guy was Ichise Ikuto's male guardian. Then Rui apologized, explaining that he had been delayed after delivering the class journal and had been stopped by girls along the way. Ikuto remarked that they were all Rui's fans and called him lucky. Rui admitted that while he appreciated the support, it was troubling when it happened every time, especially since it left Ikuto alone. Rui expressed concern, noting that unlike other boys, Ikuto seemed used to girls rather than afraid of them, which worried him as a male guardian. Ikuto understood that Rui would feel responsible if anything happened to the boy he was in charge of. Rui stated that he wanted to continue protecting Ikuto right by his side. Ikuto was struck by how handsome Rui was and thought that it made sense why Rui was popular. No matter how hard a plain guy like him tried, Rui was always next to him, perfect in everything. Even so, Ikuto questioned why he was still so unpopular in a world of reverse chastity. He wondered if there was truly no girl who had genuine interest in him as a man. Sighing, Ikuto accepted that he would never be popular like Rui. Rui noticed that Ikuto was pouting and suggested that having Rui right next to him should be enough. Ikuto found it hard to hate Rui, despite everything, and reluctantly agreed, smiling and stating that as long as Rui was by his side, that was fine. Rui was shocked by this statement, and Ikuto reflected that Rui was not only a male guardian but also a friend. Even in this world, the value of a lifelong friend had not changed. Ikuto noticed Rui blushing and acting flustered, muttering that Ikuto said things that raised his hopes without realizing it. They walked together, discussing plans to visit a newly opened cafe near the station. Ikuto confirmed that he had informed his parents and Kuno-kun that he would be late, mentioning that he was going to hang out with Rui. Rui approved, stating that people would worry otherwise, and boldly declared that he would not forgive any pervert who tried to get close to Ikuto. Ikuto thought it was reassuring, though he felt that Rui was more likely to be targeted. After eating, Ikuto felt full and satisfied. Later, Rui commented that Ikuto was finally able to live a stable daily life. Rui recalled how, when Ikuto first enrolled, he had wandered off alone, spoken to girls without a sense of distance, and used awkward pickup-like phrasing that had been unintentionally cute. Ikuto reacted with embarrassment, begging Rui not to dig that up again. He reflected that in his previous world, shortly before high school graduation, he had woken up and found himself reincarnated as a baby in this world, possessing only limited knowledge at the time. Rui then reviewed the purpose of male guardians, explaining that men alone outside school were likely to be hit on or even taken away by force, and that a male guardian's presence prevented such dangers. Rui added that there was another benefit to being a pair, and demonstrated this when they encountered a girl persistently hitting on a lone boy. Rui intervened firmly, and Ikuto supported him, warning about the potential trauma caused by persistent advances. The girl apologized and fled. Rui explained that working as a pair allowed them to smoothly rescue men being hit on. Ikuto agreed and reflected that despite living 15 years in this world, he still retained senses from his original world, leading him to underestimate danger. Rui pointed out that Ikuto had finally learned not to act on his own whims, and Ikuto credited Rui's education. Ikuto thought about how Rui had never abandoned him, despite Ikuto being far more troublesome than other boys. He acknowledged that Rui was incredibly kind. Ikuto warned Rui to be careful, stating that Rui was more likely to be targeted due to his looks. Rui thanked him quietly. A man thanked both of them for their courage before suddenly recognizing Rui's uniform and fleeing. Ikuto was confused, but Rui urged them to leave. Later, they parted at Ikuto's home. Ikuto thanked Rui for hanging out and wished him a safe trip home. Rui walked away, thinking about changing into something comfortable once home. At Rui's apartment, Rui reflected that Ikuto still misunderstood the meaning of male guardian. Rui questioned whether Ikuto realized how strange it was for a boy to guard another boy, though Rui found that cluelessness charming. As Rui removed clothing, Rui wondered whether Ikuto would be happy if he knew the truth. Rui revealed that Rui was actually a girl, blushing as she looked at her own body. Rui admitted that she wanted Ikuto, and only him, to accept her true form. Rui was shown thinking about the gender ratio being 1 man to every 20 women, a world where women were the carnivores and men had become the prey. Rui reflected that men preferred women who were slender, petite, and flat-chested, with physiques similar to their own, because it made them feel less threatened. While looking at her own chest, Rui thought that this was why male guardians cross-dressed as men. However, the version of herself reflected in the mirror was the exact opposite of that ideal. Rui believed that this was why her past had turned out the way it did. At that moment, Rui's phone rang. Rui looked at the screen and was surprised to see Ikuto's name. The scene shifted to a convenience store, where Ikuto was walking inside while thinking that he had found exactly what he needed. Ikuto noted that he needed to grab the Kyushu soy sauce and nori salt-flavored chips. Nearby, girls noticed Ikuto and murmured that there was a man, a boy, all by himself. Ikuto focused on checking out quickly and planned to eat the snacks while watching a stream. The girls continued whispering in disbelief that a boy was shopping all alone. As Ikuto exited the store, Rui called out to him. Ikuto recognized Rui and asked what Rui was doing there, jokingly wondering whether Rui was stalking him. Rui flicked Ikuto's forehead, explaining that Rui had simply been shopping there as well and that it was a pure coincidence. Rui added that she had decided to wait and escort Ikuto back and showed Ikuto the phone, expressing happiness that Ikuto had kept the promise to stay updated. Ikuto proudly claimed that he had handled everything by himself just fine. Behind Ikuto, girls had gathered, prompting Rui to warn Ikuto not to let his guard down. Rui reminded Ikuto that just because he had not been hit on that day did not mean he was safe. Ikuto reluctantly agreed, then asked Rui what was going on with Rui's chest. Rui was confused at first, but Ikuto pointed out that Rui clearly had breasts. Rui panicked internally, realizing that in the rush to check on Ikuto, she had forgotten to bind her chest. Rui hesitated, wondering what to do if Ikuto rejected her true form. Rui felt shaken and feared that she would not be able to handle it. Ikuto then came to the wrong conclusion, accusing Rui of cross-dressing as a girl just to teach him how dangerous women were, because Ikuto lacked a sense of danger. Rui sighed heavily and concluded that Ikuto was beyond dense, directly thinking that Ikuto truly was an idiot. Ikuto protested being called an idiot, even while admitting that he probably was one. Ikuto reflected that men in this world were pampered excessively and that because Ikuto still thought like his former self from before reincarnation, he could not help but feel jealous. Ikuto acknowledged that he was just a teenage idiot who wore his desires on his sleeve. Rui clarified internally that this was not exactly the kind of idiot she meant. When Ikuto asked whether Rui had said something, Rui dismissed it. As they walked, Ikuto casually commented that Rui with large breasts was not bad either. Rui stopped in surprise, and Ikuto blushed while admitting that Rui looked cute and that Ikuto would totally hit on her before abruptly stopping himself in horror at what he was saying. Ikuto reminded himself that Rui was a guy and that desperation did not justify hitting on Rui. Rui moved closer to Ikuto, asking whether Ikuto truly meant that he looked cute. Ikuto reaffirmed his opinion sincerely. Rui, blushing deeply, decided that only Ikuto would ever see her true self. Rui turned away and began walking, repeating that only Ikuto would see her true self. Ikuto was left stunned. Rui then asked whether Ikuto had checked the group chat. Rui clarified that the message was not from her but from Ikuto's precious little brother. Ikuto groaned in response. The scene shifted to Ikuto's home, where Kuno was sitting on the sofa, and asked why Ikuto was sitting in Seiza. Ikuto thought about how Ichise Kuno, Ikuto's cousin, lived with him for various reasons. Ikuto admitted that he had wondered whether Kuno was angry about Ikuto going out alone to buy potato chips. Kuno claimed not to be particularly angry, though Ikuto immediately recognized that Kuno definitely was. Ikuto reported that he had finished shopping without getting hit on even once and wondered why, saying that made him feel sad. Kuno acknowledged this but questioned why Ikuto had gone alone, reminding Ikuto that women outside were dangerous. Ikuto reflected that although Kuno was a middle schooler, Kuno was also a male guardian, which explained Kuno's overprotective nature. Kuno declared that if Ikuto were ever attacked, Kuno would hold a grudge against every woman in the world. Kuno then gasped, realizing that Kuno had said those words out loud, exposing true feelings even though Kuno had not intended to say them. Ikuto asked whether that was truly how Kuno felt. Kuno explained that the overprotectiveness stemmed from worry for Ikuto and for Kuno's own peace of mind, but Kuno did not want to be too heavy a burden on Ikuto. Kuno acknowledged that Ikuto's kindness and lack of fear toward women were Ikuto's best traits but also believed they were Ikuto's flaws. Kuno stated that if those feelings made it hard for Ikuto to live freely, then Kuno believed that Kuno should be the one to endure and suppress those feelings. Ikuto thanked Kuno, which confused Kuno. Kuno asked why Ikuto was thanking Kuno. Ikuto explained that it simply meant Kuno was worried about Ikuto. Kuno then asked whether Ikuto would improve Ikuto's behavior. Ikuto admitted uncertainty about that. Kuno reacted with a frustrated sound. Ikuto stated that talking things out like this and finding a line they could both agree on was the best way to handle it, and that they would both feel better that way. Ikuto reflected internally that in this world, Kuno's overprotective stance was probably considered correct, but living exactly how people told Ikuto to live felt suffocating. Ikuto believed that it was not who Ikuto was and that blindly obeying was boring. Kuno then concluded that, in other words, Ikuto was fine with Kuno staying exactly as Kuno was. Ikuto agreed enthusiastically, saying to bring on the overprotectiveness, then sat beside Kuno and suggested that they go out together the next day, promising to buy Haagen-Dazs. Kuno made a huffing expression and declared that, in that case, the lecture was adjourned. Ikuto's mother then commented honestly that watching Ikuto really glitched her sense of male values and asked whether Ikuto thought Ikuto was a handful. Ikuto's mother immediately reassured Ikuto, saying that Ikuto was a wonderful son, almost too good for a mother like her. Ikuto laughed internally and reflected that mothers in this world usually spoilt their sons rotten and were generally super warriors, but Ikuto's mother was different. She did not coddle Ikuto and made Ikuto handle Ikuto's own business, which Ikuto liked better because it was closer to Ikuto's previous life. Ikuto's mother added that this praise applied to Kuno as well. Kuno thanked Ikuto's mother politely. Ikuto's mother then advised Ikuto that for some people, saying what they really wanted to say was difficult, because a single word could sometimes destroy a relationship, and that Ikuto needed to make an effort to notice how others were feeling once in a while. Ikuto responded cheerfully. Ikuto's mother remarked that this exact attitude was why Ikuto looked like an idiot. Ikuto replied confidently that since there were no idiots around Ikuto, everything would surely be fine. Kuno reacted with an angry expression. The scene then shifted to the classroom, where Ikuto was sleeping during class. Rui observed Ikuto and thought with a sigh that Ikuto was just as defenseless as ever. While other boys were constantly on guard, Ikuto was the only one who could sleep soundly in a classroom. Rui admitted that if it meant being able to see Ikuto's sleeping face, maybe this was not so bad, even though Rui had once had zero interest in boys. Rui reflected that it was because of men that Rui had grown to hate herself. Rui remembered male classmates from the past, mocking her size and calling her freaky, spreading rumors that she would attack instantly if anyone got close, and referring to Rui as that giant woman, Toosaka. Rui reflected that they had judged her selfishly, based solely on her appearance, which was why Rui had quickly developed a complex regarding boys. Even the girls had stayed away from Rui. Desperate to avoid being hated by the rare few boys, Rui began hiding her breasts, struggling to breathe, and realized she could not go on living like that. When Rui entered middle school, Rui decided to reinvent herself as an Eichmann girl, a type apparently popular with other girls. Rui changed her tone of voice, demeanor, realized and everything else she possibly could. Thanks to that, Rui managed to live a slightly more bearable school life, but deep down in her heart, Rui came to hate herself even more. Rui believed that unless she was wearing a mask, people would not even acknowledge her, that the real Rui was hated, and that she was only worth anything when living a lie. Rui questioned what the point of her existence even was. Later, someone suggested a particular high school and told Rui that if it were her, Tosaka-san, she could aim for a male guardian slot. Rui repeated the words, male guardian internally, and thought about guarding the very boys who rejected her existence. Rui believed they would surely be terrified of her and demand that she be fired anyway. However, when Rui looked into the details, she saw that it included a full scholarship and living expenses, and the benefits were incredible. Rui decided that if she was going to keep living a lie anyway, she would not do it to protect boys but would become a guardian for her own sake. Later, a teacher explained that this would be Rui's assigned guardian position. Rui formally introduced herself as Toosaka Rui and stated that she would do her very best while bowing. The teacher's phone rang, and the teacher walked out while answering the call, expressing annoyance at the interruption. In the present, Ikuto stared at Rui. Rui asked whether there was something on her face. Ikuto apologized and explained that Ikuto had been thinking about how insanely handsome Rui was, amazed that such a genuinely handsome guy actually existed in this world. Ikuto remarked that it was no wonder someone like Ikuto was not popular and assumed that Rui must be extremely popular, with many friends and fans. Rui made a sad expression and admitted that she was far from being popular and did not really have many friends either. Ikuto was stunned. Rui hesitated awkwardly, and Ikuto suddenly apologized loudly, admitting that it was completely Ikuto's fault for not knowing Rui's circumstances. Ikuto explained that he had only wanted them to get along and had rushed things too much, apologizing sincerely. Rui responded that Ikuto did not need to apologize that much. Ikuto then suggested that since they were the same age, Rui could call Ikuto by name. Rui hesitated, thinking about calling a boy by his name without honorifics. Ikuto asked whether that was a no. Rui's heart raced, and Rui said that she understood. Ikudo then thanked Rui and asked whether they could drop the formal speech. Rui agreed hesitantly and addressed Ikudo by name. Ikudo happily greeted Rui and said it was nice to meet Rui. Rui reflected that this was the first time Rui had ever seen a boy smile at her. Rui then asked whether Ikudo was afraid of her. Ikudo responded with confusion. Rui pointed out that she was tall and had a large build, thinking internally that deep down Ikudo must see her as just a giant woman, like all the other boys. Ikudo responded that there was nothing wrong with that and stated that appearance was not the only thing that defined a person. Ikudo said that what mattered most was personality and chemistry, and that although they had not talked much yet, Ikudo genuinely wanted to get along with Rui. Rui was stunned and wondered why Ikudo would say such things, realizing that no boy had ever spoken to her that way before. Rui wondered whether it was possible that not every single boy was exactly the same. Rui became teary, and Ikudo extended his hand, saying that from then on, Ikudo would be relying on Rui as a partner. Rui extended her hand as well and, while shaking hands, agreed that she would be counting on Ikudo too. In the present, Rui reflected that since then, Ikudo had really kept her on her toes. As soon as school started, Ikudo went around chatting everyone up, desperate to be popular, often making girls misunderstand Ikudo's intentions. Rui believed that if she had not been there as Ikudo's guardian, those carnivorous girls would have eaten Ikudo alive by now. Rui observed Ikudo helping a girl carrying heavy books, taking them from her and offering assistance, causing the girl to blush. Rui then saw Ikudo checking on another girl who said she felt sick, offering to carry her to the infirmary, which made the girl's embarrassment worsen. Rui thought about Ikudo himself, and Ikudo remarked that he was just doing what anyone would do. Rui reflected that simply because Rui happened to be a handsome guy standing next to Ikudo, Ikudo had convinced himself that he was the unpopular one. Rui realized that Ikudo had no idea that he was making even the carnivorous girls flustered and shy because they were not used to this kind of treatment. Rui concluded that Ikudo was far too oblivious and that life was certainly never boring with Ikudo around. As Ikudo continued sleeping at his desk, Rui thought quietly that Rui was actually a girl, the exact kind of girl Ikudo was always looking for. Rui acknowledged that she was not like the other girls and did not just want any man. Rui admitted that if it was for Ikudo, Rui would do anything, blushing as she thought so. The scene shifted, and Ikuto and Rui were walking together when Ikuto remembered that their outdoor study trip was coming up soon. As Ikuto was thinking about it, rain suddenly began to fall, and Ikuto reacted in confusion. Both Ikuto and Rui were stunned as the rain showered down heavily. Ikuto reacted in shock, wondering whether it was a flash storm, and stating that they had to find some shelter, while holding his head with his hand. Rui warned that going somewhere where there were women was dangerous. Ikuto immediately agreed. While running in the rain, Ikuto urged Rui to pick up the pace. Rui confirmed that she could. Ikuto explained that his house was just a little further ahead. Rui reacted with surprise and a tense face. The scene shifted to Ikuto's house as they entered. Ikuto announced that he was home and commented that they had really gotten soaked. As Ikuto entered, Ikuto noticed that Kuno and their mother were not home yet. Rui was also soaked. Ikuto explained that he was going to toss his clothes in the dryer, and told Rui to put hers right there. Rui thanked him nervously but became tense when she saw Ikuto taking his shirt off and shouted in shock, questioning why Ikuto was taking his clothes off. Ikuto explained that he needed to dry his uniform and that he would catch a cold if he stayed in wet clothes. Rui admitted that this was true but became flustered as she saw Ikuto's chest. Ikuto asked whether Rui was looking at his abs and explained that he had been working out for about 2 years and was close to getting a six-pack. Rui denied that this was what she meant but became flustered and embarrassed. Ikuto then asked whether Rui was nervous simply because Rui was at his house and explained that he was the only one home right now. Rui was surprised. Ikuto smiled and reassured Rui to make herself at home. Rui, while blushing, whispered to herself that Ikuto being home alone was exactly the problem, though. Ikuto asked whether Rui had said something, but Rui shook her head and denied it. The scene shifted to the bathroom, where Rui was bathing. Rui wondered whether it was really okay for a guardian to be showering first, but admitted that it felt amazing after being so cold. Ikuto informed Rui that he was coming in. Rui, who was naked, allowed it. Ikuto asked whether the water was hot, and explained that he was leaving a change of clothes there. Rui thanked him and apologized for taking the shower first. Ikuto replied that it was fine and explained that it was more efficient to get clothes ready while Rui washed. Suddenly, a strong sound of thunder came. Rui reacted in fear. Ikuto also reacted in surprise and observed that the storm was really picking up. Ikuto stated that he would go make something hot to drink and hoped that the power would not go out. Rui stopped him and turned off the shower. Rui nervously asked whether Ikuto could stay close until Rui finished changing while shaking and admitting that Rui was scared of thunder and asked whether that was weird. Ikuto reassured Rui that it was not weird at all and explained proudly that everyone had things they were bad at and admitted that he himself was scared of haunted places. Rui smiled. Ikuto explained that he understood. Rui was anxious and promised that he would be right there, just on the other side of the door. Rui acknowledged it and opened the door slightly, telling Ikuto that Ikuto really was kind. Ikuto leaned against the wall and stated that Rui was his male guardian and a precious friend, and that he treated Rui better than anyone else. Rui, while blushing, said that she understood and then asked whether Ikuto had a type of girl he liked. Ikuto thought about it and answered that he liked girls who were cute, kind, and someone who was fun to be with. Rui asked what Ikuto thought about girls with big breasts. Ikuto answered honestly that he loved them. Rui laughed and commented on his honesty. Rui then asked what Ikuto would think if the girl was tall, had big breasts, and was fun to be around. Ikuto smiled and said that it sounded like the ultimate combo, and that if a girl like that actually existed, he would love to meet her. Rui froze while blushing and thought that this settled it. Rui realized that she had finally made up her mind, and that she could finally face these strange feelings she had only for Ikuto. Rui reflected that she had never thought she would fall in love with a boy, but Ikuto was special. Rui decided that she wanted to be by his side as a woman, as equals. Rui admitted that she was in love with him, and that he was the one she wanted to acknowledge her more than anyone else. Rui concluded that because she loved him, she would reveal her true form right now. As Ikuto leaned against the door, Ikuto asked Rui how the changing was going. Rui responded that, in that case, she fit the bill perfectly. Ikuto reacted in confusion. Rui then opened the door and hugged Ikuto from behind. Ikuto reacted in shock and questioned what Rui was doing. Rui's chest touched Ikuto's back. Rui was blushing and naked, and told Ikuto to look at the real her. Ikuto reacted in shock and noticed the softness and realized that it did not feel like a guy. Ikuto wondered whether the one who had been with him this whole time was actually a girl, and asked Rui whether Rui was a girl. Rui laughed. Ikuto was confused by the reaction and wondered which it was. Ikuto turned and saw Rui's face. Rui confirmed that she was a girl. Ikuto had a tense face. The rain continued outside. Rui, who had been hugging him, let him go and stated that it was now Ikuto's turn to warm up and that she would explain everything properly once he was done. Rui told him to go out to the hallway and shoot him away. Ikuto reacted in shock and walked out. Ikuto sat at the door and thought that Rui was actually a girl and questioned it seriously in disbelief. The scene shifted, and Rui welcomed Ikuto back and said that Rui was borrowing the sofa. Ikuto saw Rui's chest and wondered how Rui had hidden those until now, and thought that there was no way he should have missed boobs that huge. Rui admitted honestly that she had not expected him to be that oblivious. Ikuto apologized nervously. Rui told him to come closer and explained that she did not want Ikuto to apologize, because even though she knew that Ikuto had misunderstood and thought she was a guy, she had noticed it and still chose not to say anything. Rui asked whether they could call it even. Ikuto agreed if Rui was okay with that. Silence followed. Ikuto thought that usually they never ran out of things to talk about, but now he could not even look her in the eye. Rui asked whether she could talk about her past a bit, and explained how her height and her chest that grew too big had caused her problems starting around late elementary school, and how she was feared and hated by boys and shunned by the other girls. Ikuto, shocked, asked her to tell him. Rui said that was her past and explained that she had gone out of her way to hide her boobs and had changed her tone to sound more masculine and had been faking it all this time, which was why Ikuto did not notice. Ikuto, with a tense face, thought about how boys had looked at Rui with cold eyes because of her physique and how she had been avoided by girls who did not want the boys to hate them by association. Ikuto thought that Rui was keeping it brief and that there must have been so much more he did not know, and that the reality must have been far more painful than she was letting on, and that simply saying cheer up would be wrong. Rui stated that that was the end of her backstory and thanked Ikuto for listening. Rui said she felt a lot lighter now and declared that today would be the last time she would ever think about it. Rui asked Ikuto to look at her properly and see how she looked right now. Ikuto looked and thought that it should be such a casual request, but that this was bad and that right now he might not be able to keep his cool like usual. Ikuto said that he was looking and begged for mercy on his eyes. Rui laughed and asked honestly what he thought. Ikuto had a tense face and thought that Rui must have struggled with finding the right time to tell him she was a girl, and that bringing up those painful memories must have been tough for her. But she gathered her courage and showed him her true self, and that showed how much she trusted him. Ikuto decided that he had to be honest too. Ikuto thanked Rui for opening up to him about being a girl and about her past. Ikuto then admitted honestly that he thought the Toosaka Rui, who was tall and busty, was super cute, and said that he was counting on her again from here on out. Ikuto extended his hand. Rui blushed, closed her eyes, and said that she was so glad. Ikuto declared that he knew it and that Rui had a great smile. Rui reacted in surprise and thought of their handshake and made a poker face, remembering that day when she was able to genuinely smile in front of a boy for the first time. Rui reminded Ikuto that he had said that to her the day they first met. Ikuto remembered and said that there was no doubt about it and that it really was a great smile, and that although Rui was cool normally, a natural smile like that suited Rui way better. Rui was stunned and blushed and said that she would be counting on Ikuto from now on too. Ikuto agreed. They shook hands. Outside, the rain had stopped. The scene shifted, and Ikuto was thinking that it had been a week since Ikuto found out that Rui was a girl. Ikuto reflected that their relationship had not changed much, and that life had gone on as usual. However, Ikuto admitted that he still could not wrap his head around how such a massive chest was hidden there. Rui had explained that Rui bound them tightly with sarashi cloth to hide them. Even so, as Ikuto looked at Rui's chest, Ikuto wondered where it all went. At that moment, the teacher said that someone should read up to the next paragraph and called on Ichise-kun. Ikuto reacted in confusion and thought that he was in class and realized that he had not been paying attention at all. Ikuto struggled awkwardly, but Rui quietly told Ikuto that it was right there and helped him find the place. Ikuto read it and then sat down and thanked Rui, calling Rui a lifesaver. Rui replied that Rui was Ikuto's guardian and that it was only natural to help when Ikuto was in trouble, but added that Rui could not exactly overlook Ikuto staring at Rui's chest all class. Ikuto laughed and jokingly thanked Rui for the view with a thumbs up. Rui reacted honestly, and Rui seemed a little happy about it. Ikuto thought that maybe his eyes might naturally drift to Rui's chest from now on, but then jokingly corrected himself. Ikuto admitted that he was such a pushover, but also justified it by thinking about what guy did not love boobs. Later, Ikuto was walking in the hall when Ikuto heard someone talking about what had happened, and commenting that it sounded like quite the rare experience. Ikuto looked and saw Kamijo and Akurazaki, and recognized them as the guardians for Tanaka and Takahashi, the few other boys in school. Ikuto remembered how they had protected those boys before. Seeing them now, Ikuto realized that the male guardians really were just women in disguise, and thought that although they were usually dignified, right now they seemed like normal high school girls. Ikuto wondered whether this was what they were really like. Kamijo noticed Ikuto and waved excitedly, calling out to him. Akarizaki commented that Kamijo would startle him by calling out so suddenly. Kamijo insisted that it was fine because it was Ichise-kun. Ikuto wondered what kind of character they thought he was. Akarizaki commented that even if Ichise was fine with it, there was a proper order to things. Kamijo casually brushed it off and teased Akarizaki, calling her cute and patting her head. Akarizaki resisted but reacted honestly, which made Kamijo laugh and call her honest and cute. Ikuto thought that it was a wholesome interaction and felt that he could watch them forever, but decided he should probably speak. Ikuto addressed them and asked whether they had called his name. Both were surprised that he remembered their names. Ikuto explained that they were guardians and classmates, so of course he remembered. Ikuto thought that since guardians were cool and dignified, everyone used kun for them, so he did too. Kamijo expressed happiness, and Akarizaki said it was a pleasure to have their names remembered. Kamijo commented that it sounded dramatic. Kamijo explained that even though they were guardians, most people just called them casually without using their names, and Akarizaki added that some boys did not even remember their names by third year. Ikuto reacted in surprise, and thought that if calling their names made them this happy, he would use them more often. Kamijo then informed Ikuto that there was a staff meeting and that he could not enter the faculty room right now. Ikuto thanked her. Akarizaki apologized for approaching him suddenly, but Ikuto said he was glad they talked to him. Kamijo smiled and commented that he really was kind, and Akarizaki said he was kind even to them. Ikuto wondered whether that was true, Kamiju then asked whether it was true that Ikuto had thought Rui was a boy until recently. Ikuto felt that the question stung and realized that Kamiju meant Rui. Ikuto admitted that it was true. Kamijo commented that Rui was tall and cool, so the mistake was understandable. Akurazaki remarked that Kamijo was dealing emotional damage to him. Ikuto reacted dramatically and blamed himself for being dense. Kamiju admitted that watching from the sidelines had been interesting, and Akurazaki said she found it heartwarming. Ikuto complained that he wished they had told him. Kamijo explained that they could not because revealing Rui's secret might have ruined their relationship, and they chose to watch over them instead because they seemed close. Ikuto reflected that it made sense, remembering how girls had avoided approaching him and how people had told them to start dating already. Ikuto realized that all male guardians were actually girls, which explained certain past events. Kamiju said that it had come down to either Rui revealing it or Ikuto noticing it himself. Akurazaki and Kamijo both apologized. Ikuto said that he understood and admitted that he was at fault for not noticing. Ikuto joked about his old world expectations and quickly panicked when they questioned him about it and brushed it off. Kamijo then asked how things were now. Ikuto answered that nothing had really changed and that regardless of Rui being a guy or girl, Rui was still the same person and still an important friend. Both Kamijo and Akurazaki were stunned. Kamijo said Rui was lucky, and Akurazaki said she was envious. Ikuto then confessed, while blushing, that his eyes did drift to Rui's chest now. Both reacted in shock. Kamijo laughed and appreciated his honesty and patted his head. Ikuto thought happily about the head pat. Ikuto then asked whether Rui's handsomeness overshadowed him, since girls never approached him. He leaned in close. Kamijo and Akurazaki reacted nervously to the closeness. Kamijo and Akurazaki discussed whether to tell him and decided to explain a little. Kamijo explained that Ikuto was very kind and that girls might get carried away. Akurazaki added that his friendliness was wonderful, but not all boys would respond the same way, so girls had to carefully judge their interactions. Ikuto was shocked and realized how much effort girls put into it. Kamijo reassured him not to change. Akurazaki explained that because Ikuto was always kind, he tended to be put on the back burner. Kamijo added that he should stay as he was for Rui's sake. Kamijo explained that Rui trusted Ikuto deeply and that he was the one closest to Rui. Akurazaki said that Rui could be herself around him and asked him to continue looking after Rui. Kamijo also asked him to take care of Rui. They bowed. Ikuto smiled and agreed. Ikuto asked about the other reasons, but Rui suddenly appeared and commented that while Rui had been waiting worried, they seemed to be having fun. Rui hugged Ikuto from behind and asked what they were talking about. Ikuto panicked and joked that he was being hit on by them. Rui reacted with a scary expression. Kamijo and Akurazaki panicked, realizing Rui's reaction. Ikuto thought that he definitely could not tell Rui the truth and reflected on how dignified the guardians looked. Ikuto realized that Rui was the one who caught his eye the most. Rui asked what was wrong. Ikuto denied it and thought that although their relationship would not change, he would be more conscious of Rui as a girl now. The scene shifted to a crowded mall. Ikuto commented that it was always crowded on holidays. Kuno grabbed Ikuto's shirt and asked him to stay close, so they would not get separated.
By the way, if you enjoyed the video, maybe consider liking and subscribing? Pretty please?